Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay, minor technical glitch on my side. I was unable to see my unmute button for a few moments. I wonder if I could ask you just to please let me know if you can hear me or if you can see the presentation. Excellent. So we're about 9:02, so it's a minute or so after I would normally like to start this. So if we don't mind, let's get underway. We've got quite a lot of ground to cover today. And yeah, we don't want to be sitting around for too long. So today we're going to be going over the tax certificate preparation that you need to be doing and just where you can go in and grab your information in the different payroll software. For the most part, the payroll software that that's available out there is all pretty, how do we put this, pretty rock solid. So, you know, it doesn't really matter which software you're using. The vast majority of the software out there is fairly solid, and it does the things that it's meant to do. In other words, you know, calculating your tax correctly, storing the correct information, and all that sort of fun stuff. Where we can help it along is by making sure that we've done our preparation. And to that end, today we're going to go over some general steps to follow, and then we're going to have a look at each of the different payroll softwares. I think my sequence on the softwares is correct here, but I may be a little bit off in their sequencing, but I don't think that's overly important. And then we're also just going to have a quick look at Easyfile and how we bring the information into Easyfile itself. And that's the SARS's portal for employers to use to import their data. So we have to have some sort of assumptions, and our assumptions for today is that you have a EMP5, which is your statement of account, or your EMP501s, or some form of manual reconciliation of the payments that you've actually made to SARS for the tax year. So that's up to the end of February 2024. We're also going to assume that you have a basic understanding of your payroll system, and that you can navigate the various screens that you may need to get to, you know, and that you know how to pull reports. We also have the assumption that you have a basic understanding of the SARS Easyfile employer system, and that you have your logins and the other bits and pieces that you may need for e-filing, which you're going to need when we do the submission itself from Easyfile. So you're going to need your login, and that login is going to have the correct profile, the EMP501 submission profile. Okay. Bottom line, if you're registered with SARS, you have to submit the EMP501 biannually, and this one is the annual submission. We're currently doing the annual submission. Our deadline is the end of May this year. Just remember, we've spoken, if you've been on any of these before, we've spoken ad nauseum about ETR. So please remember your ETR period ends at the end of February. If you need to make any adjustments, it has to be done within that tax year, and it can only be from the September of the previous year to the February of the current year. So it's just something to keep in mind. So we've got to go through our preparation. So we've got to go make sure that all our data is in the system and all that sort of nice things. And we've got to verify that data, company name, registration numbers, and a person's, sorry, just thrown it for a second. Our registered person with SARS details also have to be in there. Our employee details, names, addresses, tax reference numbers or TRNs. We're going to export our interface file. We're going to load it into Easyfile and then verify our financial data again. And then we'll make our submission to SARS. And of course, don't forget that you need to make a backup of all your documentation. Okay, so that's more for your record keeping than anything else, but please make sure you've got backups of your data and of the reports that you've used to make your balancing. Just within our preparation, please remember ETI, there's always complexity, there's always challenges. So it's prudent to make sure that you check your ETI carefully and verify as early as you possibly can. Within our preparation, what can we do is to start your work early, try and get through your mundane tasks of checking people's names, addresses, and even to some point getting address details sorted out, and making sure that the information that you have on your payroll is clean as far as SARS is concerned. Remember that nice SARS address layout. I think we've all had it for enough years now that we all know what it is, with the country code, which is ZAF for South Africa. What we can do in pre-preparation or on our take-on or onboarding phase is to try and get all of that information on when we bring somebody onto payroll so that we don't have any issues going forward. Other important information that we need to look for and make sure that we've got correct. Remember, if it's an ID number, obviously there's verification that can happen for that, but passports, more information is required than just a passport number. So we need country of origin, as well as issue date. So those are really important bits of information if you do happen to have people who only have a passport. As far as the tax reference number is concerned, SARS are again doing their little push to make sure that everybody has a TRN. And they can be fairly problematic because SARS have made it the employer's responsibility for you to register your staff if they're not registered. So it is quite important for you to, apply the appropriate amount of pressure to your employees to get them to do this stuff with SARS. But to their credit, SARS has done a lot of movement in trying to make it easier for people to get their TRNs. And one of the ways they've done it is to use this USSD service where somebody can use a phone, not necessarily even a smartphone, to be able to request their TRN from SARS, and then they could give it to you. So instead of having to phone the call center, you have these options available to you now as well. Okay, what are our problems that come up frequently in our preparation is that our payments don't match to payroll. Okay, so the EMPSA or your EMP501s may have anomalies. Maybe you typed a number incorrectly, maybe finance got a figure wrong, maybe somebody used an incorrect report. Whatever the situation may be, you need to make sure that your 201s and your EMPSA match up, and that's the same as what you have in payroll. Nasty, nasty, nasty one. Your ETR values don't match up to your declared ones. Again, that's the values on payroll don't match up to what's on your 201s. This can be really straightforward. It might just be that somebody's been left off for argument's sake, or it could be quite complicated and that there's some sort of validation error or something along those lines. So please, if you do use ETR, or you do have an ETI component to your submission, rather get your submission in early so that you have opportunity to correct any of these errors, as well as the time to be able to find where the error is. So if we start having a look at our actual payroll software and whereabout we go to get our data and our reporting, we're going to start off having a look at CyberWorks, or the payroll system that's provided by CyberWorks. There are a lot of flavors out there. There is an HR Talk version. There's a number of other versions as well. So again, our master information, probably the first step in all of this is checking to make sure that all your master detail, and master detail in this instance refers to your employee information. So there is a tax exceptions report where you can go and extract that report directly. It tries to mimic any errors that we would have received if we were looking at the SARS Easyfile employer. It doesn't have any values in it, but it does give us all the master file validations. So you can find that in your report section. The only thing that you need to be aware of with this report when you're running it is under here, under the report type, you can either have interim or you should select whole year if you're running for the end of the year. You can change the exceptions. You can leave it as multiple, which gives you one report for all the different exception types. But for argument's sake, if you know you've got a couple of TRNs that aren't that you need to go and get sorted out, you could just say, show me the tax reference number errors. And that's an example of what that report would look like when it comes out. To get information for your employees or to get information from your employees, you can use the personal information update form. It's quite a nice report. It is a bit long-winded, it's a bit lengthy, but basically gives you all of the information that you might need in a format that the person can do an update next to information that's not correct. So there are a couple of steps to follow. You go and select the report from your reporting batch, and it generates something along these lines. Now, obviously, the employee names and numbers have been blanked out, but in essence, you can go and enter that information. I mean, you can go and extract this information, either print a copy or send it to the person electronically and allow them to complete or handwrite in the information. If you have somebody whose information is incorrect, you can then use this form to correct for that individual or, do it en masse if you need to. When we want to start looking at our EMP501, we can use the 501, which is a generic report, or the EMP501 ETR reconciliation report to be able to pull our data out and go and have a look at it. So this is our EMP501 report. So basically, it pulls out a generic RIP or generic RIP of the EMP501. And it has all your different columns as you would normally see on your SARS documentation, your PAYE, your SDL, your UIF, and then a total. And then there's a spot for you to enter your total payments if you wanted to enter them to do a comparison. Remembering this report has the total liability less any ETR. So this should tie back to your actual payments, not necessarily your payroll reports, because your payroll reports would have included it wouldn't have reduced your liability by the ETR. We can then use the ETR recon to check that our PAYE less our ETR gives us our net PAYE. Okay, so you want to check that on a monthly basis if you can. You want to be able to check that at the end of the year to make sure that everything is hunky-dory. And remembering that from September to February is the period that you're currently reconciling for ETI. If you need to see the detail of the employees, you can use your ETR qualifying employees. Hey, we're making some good time today. That's great. Next, we're going to have a look at our Sage VIP, the Premier, or the SBCPP software. Both of those, one is obviously the cloud-based, the Sage Business Cloud Payroll Professional is the cloud-based, but they in essence are the same software and work in exactly the same manner. With the Sage products, they generally have a nice flow of steps to follow. So unlike the Psiber product, which is a little bit more, go and get the reports that you want, they seem to have a nice flow or a wizard kind of scenario for you to use. Okay, so let's get into that. The latest version, 6.2a, needs to be installed and on your machine as at the end of February. So if you have the VIP Premier, I hope that you've done your installations. If you are on SCBPP, then your software would have been updated already for you. It would all be done handled. Okay. The steps to follow if you are on Premier is to create your copy system and make sure you're obviously in the final period. With SCBPP, when you roll over your final period, a new instance will automatically get created for you. So on Premier, to start off, one goes, on all these software packages, one goes to the RSA resubmissions and start the submission process. And it gives you a little notification and it checks that you're in the final period. Okay. With SCBPP, you don't access that from your main data. You need to go across to the actions and go to tax year-end management, and then you'll be able to select your company to work with. Otherwise, you'll be working on your live data, which is not going to work for your IRP5s. But regardless, once you've done that, you get presented with our submission process from Sage. And we got to go through our steps. So much like the steps that we've indicated, we're going to validate our company information. We're going to validate if there are any errors and warnings, any additional information, retirement funds, 501 values, and then do a test run, import it into Easyfile, and then perhaps change that to a live file. Okay. Some of these steps may be applicable to you, some of them may not be. So for argument's sake, if you don't have any retirement funding within your organization, you don't necessarily need to do step 4. So although they're saying step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, you can, for argument's sake, step over some of these steps and not do them. As a general rule, though, just follow through the steps, and even if you just say step complete, if there's nothing for you to do in that step, then at least you have record that the following, all the steps have actually been processed through. When we start with our basic company information, and that step just literally opens up your screens and allows you to check and or enter the information that is available to you. Remembering that the company reporting address, physical address, and the contact detail persons are mandatory information. They do need to be completed. So there's a little list of all the bits and pieces that have to be completed. And here is your basic company information screen, which you can update all of that information on. You then presented with your period. Current calendar must be 12, so you must be in the last period of the tax year. You've got to select your correct tax year, make sure that your tax year is correct, rather not select it. What your payment cycle is, it's monthly or weekly or whatever it happens to be. And again, you just need to verify this information. There should be no reason, if all your processing has happened correctly, that there is any issue on this screen. Sorry, I went backwards there. Okay, then we move on to our next step. And we can run that with validation only, either from that step, or alternately, we can run it from within the report section of the ERP as well. This will return us, much like the report from Psiber, all of our errors, any validation errors that might have happened. So tax numbers mandatory, business telephone numbers not done, all those sorts of things. And you can then go back via the employee screen and go and enter all of your information. When we hit step 3, we've got our additional information. So this will give us things like company car, bursaries, anybody who's been marked as a manual tax certificate, any terminations during the year. So again, it's really important to go through that. If you have any of those situations, make sure that you've checked and validated any of your additional information. Validate out the retirement funds, which is our step 4. Gives us a retirement fund listing, employee contributions, company contributions, a scheme code, basically allowing you to just verify that everything that you're expecting to see is actually going to be on your IRP5s. Yeah. The point to note here is your type of scheme, defined contribution or defined benefit fund or a hybrid fund. Yeah, so make sure that you've got those selected correctly, because they are handled, the DC and the DB funds, the defined benefit funds and the defined contribution funds are handled just ever so slightly differently from a taxation point of view, as far as the fringe benefit side of the situation is concerned. Okay. When we hit now our step 5, which is the 501 reconciliation, the note here is to run each of the companies, if you have multiple companies, to run each one individually. Okay. So it works better that way, and that's just the route that we suggest you go with it. And sorry, excuse me. Within step 5, which is your recon process, you're going to first reconcile your payment history. Your history. You're going to run that report. You're then going to check it against your SARS values. You can run additional reporting, and then step 4, which is the confirmation of that. The 501 recon report from Sage is really nice in that it comes out as a Excel document, and you can actually complete your expected values or your actual values in the yellow columns, and it will calculate a difference for you. As you can see on this sample, all the differences are exactly what the values are showing, simply because nobody's captured anything into the yellow data yet, or yellow columns yet. Onto our next step, which was then be running our 12-month report. And this then gives us a nice detail, February to the end of the year. So this report has just been run for an interim period. But the idea being that you would then be able to verify that all of your data that you were expecting for each individual, total earnings, total tax, total perks or fringe benefits, all those things are actually pulling through correctly, and that you have the right values there. You can also then run a the history report, but please remember that you also want to make sure that you include your terminations. Otherwise, it will exclude them, and you won't balance because it won't have included those in this report. And again, a sample of what that report looks like. So there you go. Make sure that you got that is ticked, and you can run it as a detail report or a summary if you just want to have a look at the total. So you can run it as a summary as well. And then similarly, ETR obviously being it's a little bit of a challenge that it always is. We want to have a look at our ETR and make sure that that balances as well. And you can run your ETR history report to do that. Step 6 is to actually generate your certificate file. You're going to run tax year end. You're going to run it as a test. So there we go. You can also access it from the reports menu if you don't want to go through the steps. You can go to report, it's normally report 58, and you can go and run the EMP5, the IRP5s, and you can select the year-end file here and then process the file. Current company. Make sure you're on the right PAYE reference number in case you have multiple companies. And then you follow your steps. You've got your periods. If you need to, you will need to enter your password when you create this file. All the employer details will pull through from your data, from your system's information, but you can again update them at this point if you so desire. And when you do this, it's going to create your recon report. It's going to create your summary. And one of the things that you need to do here is you need to decide whether you want to do the tax certificate print. Okay, so remembering that this specific product within Sage, if you're using the Sage self-service, there is no mechanism to take your tax certificates from here and put it into the self-service. So that is a limitation on the specific product of Sage. There's no way to put the tax certificates into the self-service. So you do need to find another delivery method. Normally that would entail printing or emailing these to each person. The file information, we select our location, and as a general rule, the IRP5 will either be called test IRP5 or live IRP5, and then the tax year. So that's just important to note. And please always remember that you need to know where this file is being saved, because later on when we go and try and import the file into Easyfile, we're going to need to know where it is. We generally save these locally. And when I say locally, I mean on a local C drive for the machine or a mapped network drive, because Easyfile does not like to work over over the network to get its files. So it likes to work locally. So as a general rule, we would say to you, rather save that in a local file and you can move it to your secure network location or your backup location at a later point. Okay, so it's now created your Easyfile and it will create your IRP5s and your reconciliation report. So there's our recon reports showing you a certificate number, the totals of the values that are there, and there's a sample of the summary report, and then an example of the IRP5 that would get created. Okay. Once we've done the Easyfile upload, we verified that our file is correct. One of the things, and we'll get to that in a little bit, one of the things that will happen is that the file will say that it is a test file and you need a live file before you can load it into Easyfile. So you go back and do the same process in essence, and this time you select that you want it as a live run in your type of run. And that will create your live run file for your Easyfile, which will then import. I want to use the word properly, but it's probably not the right word. Yeah. Now we're going to go into the Sage 300 people. The Sage 300 people process, although it is a Sage product, it's a lot more aligned with the Psiber style, where it doesn't follow a specific wizard that you have to go through, but rather allows you to work a little bit more independently and choose, the steps that you want to go through. Okay, so we're making really good time today with all of these steps. So yeah, hopefully we've got a good question and answer session afterwards where people can ask us lots of questions. With the Sage 300 people product, you don't need to make any sort of special backups or anything like that, but you do need to make sure that you've run your tax total monthly. If you don't know where that is, that's a report, a area in the system that you need to go to on a monthly basis just to go and do the finalization of that period to make sure it's all ready for your IRP5s. You will start to pick up a lot of validation errors if you don't do your tax total monthly on a monthly basis and you get to running your validation reports. You will start to get SRC code errors and all sorts of other fun things. However, if you haven't done it, it's not a train smash. You literally just need to go and run those, for the 12 periods or whatever many periods that needs to be run for. So within Sage 300, we generally use the validation report system. It is in one little area. It's in the extract area in the exports area of the Sage 300. So if you know the product, you'll know that there's a little exports tab on the left-hand side, and in there is the tax certificate export. So there's just a little description of how to get there, and a couple of other bits and pieces, but that's, lots of words on the screen. Basically, you go to your export type and you select a validation run. What's nice about this specific piece is that you can do this validation run at any point in the year. So you don't only need to do validation runs at your tax year end period or at your interim tax period. You can run them at any time of the year so that you can check and be prepared so that when you get to the end of year, everything is nice and clean. So in essence, this is what it looks like. So there's our exports tab. We choose our tax certificate export. We choose our company and our tax year, and then we select from the list the validation run. There are a number of options in there. So you can do a validation run, you can do an interim submission, you can do a final submission, as well as doing a financial check as well. All right, so those are the things that are available to you. If you have more than one company or more than one company rule, they will all be listed for you and you can run them together, obviously only within the same tax reference number. You don't want to be running a certificate with multiple tax reference, or certificates rather, with multiple tax reference numbers. So in our list, we can then If we're just want to run a validation for us to check if everything's okay, maybe we don't want to select any of the reports because we're in March and we're just checking our data. So you can not click that at all. And also you select your run type much like you did on the other products. You say that this is a test run or it's a live run. If you're only doing it validation, I would generally suggest that you leave that as a test. As soon as you run that validation report, it will normally come back and say there's a problem or there is no problems. If you have no problems, then you're great and everything is sorted. If there are issues, it will produce a Excel spreadsheet style for you. One of the nice, well, not so nice things about this is that this error report doesn't by default save itself anywhere, or it doesn't give you a nice little save button for you to save it. What we would generally suggest that you do is that you right click on it and then save as Excel. So if you know Sage products, I mean Sage 300 people product, you'll know that a lot of the screens you can right click and then save that as XLX data. And that's what we would suggest that you do here. You can then go through your employee screens and go and update any information that may be missing or not verifying correctly. One of the things that we have found in this software package specifically is a inability for it to remove the spaces from telephone numbers. So lots of people enter telephone numbers as, let's say, 031 space 5641155. The SARS doesn't want the space. A lot of the other software packages will by default remove any additional spaces that happen to be there. Sage 300 people doesn't. So if you've entered phone numbers like that, you are going to need to go and update them and correct them. The same thing would be true if you had left a digit out per se. So you had captured 8308, yeah, instead of typing 083, you typed 83, blah, blah, blah. And you've done that, then it would also throw that number out and would be here in your validation. What is nice though is if you're doing a financial validation, this will also give you any warnings that would come up under your financial validation. So for argument's sake here at the bottom here, we can see a warning and there's another one over here. This is a SARS code. It's been moved and it's giving you a warning that things have been moved around already. And the reason why that is 3702 is obviously a travel and it's just moving around the excess version, the excess value in the travel. If we need to do updates to people, then a report that we can use for that would be the employee detail report. And much like the Psiber report, it's a very detailed report. It's quite long-winded, but it is nice and clean, and it has all of the data that you may need to be able to update your employees correctly. Okay, so that's another one that you can go and run, and that is under your normal report section. So you go to your report section and go and select your report from within there. What's really nice with the Sage 300 product is that you can create this as a scheduler. In other words, you can email this form to the individuals within your company, assuming obviously that you have a recorded email address for them, using the scheduler. That's not really covered on how we do that, but basically you create a new task, you complete all the details that are there, and you can then schedule this report to go out to people. So ideally what you could be able to do there is build an automatic scheduler for yourself to be able to send their information out, should you, to make sure that your information is up to date all the time. As we spoke about a little bit earlier, the tax total monthly or the tax monthly total, if we ever need to rebuild, so for argument's sake, payroll got closed, but something had to happened afterwards, and you change somebody's rate of pay, or you paid them a little bit extra of something, and it impacted your EMPSA or your EMP501, you would need to go back and do a tax total rebuild. So in the company management options on the left-hand side, you would open up the tax monthly total. You would click on the applicable month with the applicable tax reference number and go to the detail of that. So by double clicking it or click on the detail. There you would use the rebuild button and it would then reprocess that period in the background. Not entirely sure of the technical what happens, but basically it goes back and makes sure that everything according to payroll is what it has in that line item. Any corrections, any year-to-dates that were made or ETR corrections would also then be done as well. But remember that that potentially will throw your EMP501 in payroll to be different to your EMP501 that was actually submitted. In most cases, you are aware of that, and it's something that's been changed, and it's just a recording thing that's had to happen in payroll. If that's the case, then you should all be good, and your EMP501 should then balance with your EMP501 from the system should balance with your EMP501 from SARS or your submitted values. Okay. If we just want to have a look at some of the other types of reports that we've seen before, again, we could go back to our EMP501 to our EMP501 report or to our export screen where we did our validation. And instead of selecting just the export type of validation, we can do an EMP501 report only. And you can follow the steps that are there. So basically, we expand it, we select the export type. So again, it's the tax certificate export. We expand the exports option. We select the companies that are involved. We complete our fields, and then we can export that. And what that gives us, instead of doing an EMP501 or the disk itself, it gives us a similar report to what we saw on Sage, SCBPP, and Premier. It can be saved. Again, right-click Save As, and export it to Excel. And again, you can then pull in your actual completed paid over values and see if you have any differences. So just trying to allow you a little bit of leeway or a little bit of ability to execute this to be able to see exactly what is actually going on in your payroll. So that one's really nice to be able to utilize. Other reports that we can use, there is a report called Reconciling Differences. And again, that is in your All Reports section. We can use the period analysis or an employee 12-month report if you need to get to detail of each individual item and potentially each month that it's been paid. And that is, again, is in all reports under the payroll section. And there, I don't want to try and pronounce that, Brinder app, or under all reports, you can run the EMP 12-month report to get you that detail. You could also use the financial analyzers section and run a report from that side, which is then by default going directly into Excel. Okay. And again, we also have got to make sure that we're checking our ETR values. So we're going to go run our ETR detail report. And again, it's in our all reports section. Under payroll, ETR detail report, and we can go and run it for the periods that we're looking for. You can either run it by putting your filter in here for a month, or you can run it for the entire tax year. So in this case here, you can see I've put it in just for 1 month, but obviously that would be if I was trying to find something specific. You would generally be running that for the entire year. And this is the resultant that you get, giving you the detail, the person, date joined, if there was an error, what the issue is with that error. I mean, with that ETR, and then telling you the ETR value. So for argument's sake, in this report, if you found an ETR total or ETR value sitting against this person, but their date joined was before 2013, then you may have an issue with your ETR. Okay, so it's just important to go through and check those. Okay. Once you've done all of your validation, you're happy and now need to pull your disk out, you go back to your tax certificate export. So again, it's all from that one under exports, that one area, screen, whatever you would like to call it. Select your company, your tax year, and then your export type now will be for this submission, year tax year end. For your interims would be biannual. Okay, select your companies, and then right down at the bottom, we've got test or live. and we've got our export path. Again, you need to know where the file's going to be because we're going to need it. And it gives us a file name. Now, you can change the file name to be whatever you like. If you leave it as the generic, it's always easier to find at some point. If you know that you're looking for something called IRP5 export and then a tax year associated, it's often easier just to go in and find that report like that then. But yeah, that's how you get your file out at the end of the day. Remember, try save it locally. Remember where you've put it. Right. I'm just going to mute for 1 second and clear my throat. And not to mention have a sip of my coffee. All right, on to the last of the payroll softwares, and then we will jump into the Easyfile. Payspace. Now, Payspace ones are really interesting because they keep all of their information nicely together like the Sage product does. It gives you a nice little, you'll see in a second, a nice little area to work within. But there's not the highly defined steps to follow that you have to. You can jump around and do things as and how you please. All right, so let's jump into the Payspace arena. Go. So as I said, all the steps are together for all the users. They're all under the report section, interestingly enough, and it's underneath the tax certificate run area. And then once you've got to the tax certificate run, you select retrieve files and reports for February, or alternatively, if you were running for your interim period, you would be doing that for your August submission. Okay, so what would you like to do? Retrieve files and reports for February, retrieve files and reports for interim, which is the August submission. Okay, if you can either email the reports to yourself, so you can do a little tick box over here, or you can just allow them to download. So if you've worked in Payspace before, you'll know that it likes to download all the reports directly onto your system, into your downloads folder, and this is no different. So everything that you do here, it literally just does the downloads for you and drops them into your downloads folder. Remember to select the correct tax year. What's nice about this is it doesn't just say tax year, it actually gives you the dates so that you can easily see you're on the right year. We often get people confused with when we're saying tax year 2024, and they think that is the year that we're currently in, but it always references the February. The tax year references the February of the year. So it's actually majority of the data that you're getting for tax year 2024 is actually 2023's data. And when we throw that in with Department of Labor and they want to do your return of earnings, your COID return, and they're saying tax year 20, I'm doing it, and they're saying year 2023, they're meaning 2023 to February 2024. So they reference the March, when does the March fall? And SARS references when does the February fall? Enough of that. Okay, so quickly into the Payspace arena. They've got everything nicely together for you. Your 201 breakdown, which is your detail, shows you all your employees, your 501 and your ETR breakdown report. Those reports can all be executed directly from here. Again, when you click on the execute button, it downloads the report for you once you've selected any information, other information that it may require. Okay. Then we get into the next section where it says tax year end file, and that creates the interface file for you for Easyfile. And again, you've seen before, we've got test, we've got live in that Dropbox, and then you've got save and retrieve. The one thing that's slightly different with the save and retrieve for the tax year end file is that it emails you an update to say that you've requested that file as well as the download. If for whatever reason you've done that and it's processing in the background and you're not really sure what's going on, or you want to see if you have downloaded the file before, you have a view creation progress. Now, this is not sort of like a record 1 of 2, record 3 of 5, whatever it happens to be. It gives you the last 5 times that the certificate file has been created and any errors that might have been created with it. So it's quite a useful little tool if you're trying to see, how things are going with your actual extract. And finally, the tax reports itself, and that is when you need to actually give the people their IRP5s. Okay, so you can follow through those, run them as you need. An example of the non-financial report, which is the first one, much like you've seen with all the payroll systems, it gives you a breakdown of all the information that's on the system. You can then use the system itself to go and upload that information on the employees' data screens, or alternately using the mass imports if you so choose. And then, as we saw on the other screen, let's just go back to the screen, one there and one here, previous one. For Payspace, we just select our file and click Save and Retrieve here, and it downloads the file for us. So Payspace has the potentially the simplest methodology, but the assumption is that you've done all of your prep work, all of your validating of your master files, all of your employer data, and all that sort of fun stuff on your Payspace payroll prior to going into this area. So yeah, Payspace's one is really straightforward. It does allow you to just go in and extract your file. The Sage products in general will not allow you to extract your file until all your validation errors are gone. Psiber and Payspace, a little bit more flexible. So when we get into the Easyfile, please remember that it's expecting at this stage, or we should be at this stage, you have a file that has no real issues as far as payroll software is concerned. The challenge is always that between payroll software and SARS validation, there may be a slight variance. There may be some sort of difference that you didn't, or the software didn't pick up in payroll, that it may pick up in the Easyfile employer software. Okay, so let's have a quick overview of the employer software, the Easyfile employer software. That, as I said before, starting off with your payroll file, it needs to be a local drive, normally your C drive. Not to say that it won't work over a network drive, but it's not recommended. And SARS will say that it doesn't work. Experience tells me that it does, but it's a bit, no, not a bit slow. It's significantly slower. And it's just, if something goes wrong, it's just another chink in the armor, another hole in the armor that you need to be able to get this stuff sorted out. With most of the files that you get from the various software, the tax year is in the extension so that you can make sure that you are loading the correct file. But in essence, from the left-hand menu, you select import payroll file. You select again. Once you've selected it, this little pop-up will jump up, and then you select your import payroll file again, and it tells you there only files on the local disk can be imported. Use your browser to go and select the file, or the pop-up browser to go select the file. And then it's going to say the payroll file is ready. Once you've selected it, do you want to import it? You say yes, and it processes that file. If everything up to this point has gone well, you will get passed and you've selected test. Okay. So remember then, if that's what you've done on the Sage products or on any of the other products, you're going to loop back to your software and change it from a test file to a live file and re-extract it. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. If your file is a live file at this stage, it will then process those certificates into the Easyfile software. Okay, that's quite an important piece there. The file has to that was bad. The file has to, first of all, be valid with no errors or no issues, as well as being marked as a live file for it to be loaded into Easyfile. If you get a warning or you get warnings, or you get a failure, it will create for you an import log, which will detail all the issues that the SARS software has found with your file. Now, those may or may not be the same as what you've seen in the payroll software. Okay, remembering payroll software may have been updated a month, 2 months before this Easyfile, latest version of Easyfile software is being set up. So while there should be no differences, it is possible that there will be. Okay. Go through your error file or your warnings file. Things that will throw warnings are tax reference numbers and other non-essential information. Things that will throw errors are bad characters in your file, which payroll may not have picked up. So for argument's sake, if you have special characters, special non-printable characters, when you were entering somebody's, I don't know, their name, and you put in an inverted comma perhaps, or some other accent character that SARS doesn't recognize, you may see that as an issue coming out. If that's the case, you have to go back to your payroll software, update it, change it there, re-extract your file, and reload it into Easyfile. Okay. That's obviously the dreaded one. Payroll file has failed. You don't really want to see that. Investigate and fix these errors. Once your file has loaded, we then start the actual submission process. And unfortunately, I can't really demonstrate the process here because we don't really have all the details. We don't want to be loading information on here, and we can't have test information with SARS. So at the end of the day, we go through, we click on the declaration, we select the tax year and period. So here we want 2402 because we're doing the full submission, and oh, sorry, my throat is very dry. We request the information. As soon as you do that request, you're going to have to enter your username and your password for Easyfile. Okay. And at that stage, a dummy in inverted commas or a baseline EMP501 will be loaded based on the information that has been supplied, A, by you in this interim file, interface file, the EMP201s that have been submitted on a monthly basis, and any third-party data that might be pertinent. Okay, so at this stage, you probably won't see any of the third-party data, but the third-party data does exist with SARS so that they will know, for argument's sake, all the people that are on medical aid and how many dependents the medical aid believes they have. Right. Once you've had a look at that data, and there you're going to specifically be looking at things like, is my ETI on my certificates matching the ETI that I have claimed, as well as what it says on the SARS file, on the SARS EMP501 file. And you're going to specifically look under financial data and make sure that the liability to you or by you, it should be 0. If all your reconciliations are correct and everything has been entered correctly, that by you or to you, it's a little slash in between, should read as 0. Then you know that your submission is ready. Okay. Once you know your submission is ready, you're going to select submit on this screen, which is your submit to SARS screen, and you're going to click on submit, and that will then ask you for your username and password. You will then be loaded into, that will then be loaded into SARS's mainframe back-end system. And at that stage, you'll get a notification back to say your file has been loaded successfully. Please remember, although Easyfile says that that file has been successfully read in, successfully submitted, it is always prudent to go in to Easyfile. So your actual SARS's system that we use, go into Easyfile, go to the 501 area and go and pull a status. That will give you a submitted or a pending or a not found situation. Once you find it there as submitted, then you know SARS has your data and you're good. You're not going to pick up any submission penalties or late fees or anything along those lines. If for whatever reason you've done your submission, it's come back successful on your Easyfile software, but your e-filing says it doesn't, something's wrong, then please, you need to reach out, because SARS then don't have your actual declaration and you're going to have to fight with them and be able to prove that you have done that submission. Normally, you will find that that happens when there is some other item or some other situation that is causing a problem. Perhaps there is a previous submission that is outstanding. Perhaps there's something on the file that didn't transfer correctly. Lots of scenarios could take place that could leave you in a situation where you don't necessarily have all the data that you're looking for, or SARS doesn't have all the data that they're looking for. Before we get into our Q&A session, or our period for people to be able to ask us some questions, I just wanted to let everybody know, and if you've been keeping track with SARS and you've been up to date with all of your SARS notifications, as well as attending some seminars and that sort of fun stuff, that potentially beginning from next year, SARS is looking for us to do this kind of process every month. In other words, they're looking for a 501 style, and we're not going to call it a 501 because they're not entirely sure what it's going to be called yet at this point, at least not open to the public. That's going to be coming out. The SARS's project plan is called Vision 2025. They moved it from Vision 2024 after a bunch of software developers got together in the payroll authors group and basically asked a bunch of questions that SARS hadn't really given all that much detailed thought to. And I want to say they hadn't thought of them, but they hadn't thought through all the practicalities. And they went away again to go and do some more of their homework. But it is coming. And that would entail us, or entail you, doing your EMP201 on a monthly basis and then submitting a balancing or a 501 scenario every month. So that is something to look forward to. I don't know whether it's in trepidation or with excitement that you don't have to do it once a year. Generally speaking, if we do it every month, it will become part of the process and it will sort of become easier, one hopes. But there's still a lot of holes in the technical manner in which SARS wants certain things to be handled. So keep your eyes and ears open. Not meant to scare everybody at this point, but it is something SARS is looking at. And yeah, we're expecting at least the beginnings of the rollout to happen for tax year 2025. Okay, and with that, I would like to open the floor to anybody who have any questions. You may either post it in the comment section, or alternately, if you can unmute. I'm not entirely sure if that's been allowed on the session, but if you would like to, please feel free, ask any questions. Just open up the chat. So I have a question. Can foreigners also register for a tax reference number? Yes, they can. 100%, they can register for a tax reference number. There is a bunch of information that they need to have, but the best way of doing that is getting them to phone the SARS call center or reviewing it on SARS's website. Although you can't do the actual request on the website, you can collect all the information that you need together from there. Okay, will we receive these slides? Candice, would you answer that? I think that what happens is that these go up onto the website as soon as it's ready, under the...
So the recording of the webinar will be posted on our website and our YouTube page, and I will email all the attendees a copy of your slides should they wish.
Perfect. Thank you, Candice. Can foreigners apply for UIF if they did contribute? The challenge, shall we call it, with foreigners applying for UIF is the idea of whether they are meant to be repatriated at the end of their contract. So if their contract is open-ended and or there is no clause to repatriate them, in other words, they are legally within the country to work, perhaps they're from another SADC nation, perhaps they're from one of our bordering nations, then yes, in essence, they can claim. If, however, they are in the situation where they are here for a few months on a specialist contract, and they're meant to be what's the right word? Repropriated sounds wrong. Sent back to their origin country, shall we say? Then no, they wouldn't be able to claim UIF. So it actually has to do more with a contract than with a hard line yes or no. I hope that answered your question. Right, any further questions? Ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further questions, then by all means you can log off. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and I hope that we've opened your eyes in some areas and allowed you to see some of the things that are available to you out there. Thank you very much and have a lovely day. I will stay on until the end of our time if anybody would like to stay on and ask a question.